also getting asked, we're also getting asked a lot of questions about parades and things like Nebraska Land Days and stuff like that. So we know people want to do advanced planning on those sort of things. Again, it's going to be difficult to do some of that until we get a better feel for how our loosened restrictions are going to impact the healthcare system as we go into May. But we also want to try and be able to provide information for that. And then just finally, going along with our increase in testing, we're ramping up our contact tracing ability. So just to give you a feel for it, every local public health district probably has between 7 and 15 people, and if Kim's on the line, she can tell you specifically about the Panhandle, but generally between 7 and 15 people that can do contact tracing. And what we have been doing is standing up teams in state government to act as a supplement to those local public health department teams to be able to really ramp up our contact tracing so that we can do a better job of finding the people who have been not only tested positive through our testing, but all the people they've had a contact with over the last 2 weeks to get those people to isolate and quarantine as well. So that's really the way we kind of turn this around, kind of standard epidemiology type process. Find the people that are infected, get them to isolate, find all their contacts, get them to quarantine, and that's how you really put a fence around this virus. And so we've been able to stand up about 6 teams so far, about 228 people to add on as a supplement to the folks in the local public health departments. We expect to be able to have by the week of May 11th, we'll probably have that up to the full 324 up with additional private resources and maybe another 150 or more to being able to come online. And then ultimately try and get to our goal of 1,000 people who are doing that contact tracing, which is what our kind of our medium or our long-term goal is really have that semi-permanent organization that will be working to be able to contact trace as long as we are dealing with the virus until there's a vaccination. So that's been an important aspect of our overall plan. From a PPE standpoint, of personal protective equipment, we're confident that we're going to be able to continue to provide that. We just got some gowns in. We're getting more gowns in. And that's kind of been the one thing that we've been kind of short on. But other than that, we're feeling pretty good about our supply of PPE to meet the needs for healthcare organizations across the state. So if you look at all the different boxes we check mark, you know, we're doing more on testing, standing that up, doing more on contact tracing. PPE is in pretty good shape. We continue to work with specific facilities like food processors and long-term care facilities about specific plans, you know, with regard to their populations. They're different populations, but they have kind of specific needs about trying to do a better job of social distancing in those workplaces. So we're working on that. And, you know, it's just moving along in the right direction with regard to how we can start making some of these relaxations. And we want to just make sure that we don't do anything that would have to, you know, require us to go back and put more restrictions on later, because I know people are pretty darn tired of it. So with that, Commissioner, I'll turn it back over to you.
And thanks, Governor, for that update. And there'll probably be a couple little questions along the way. I'm still getting some questions on graduation and other fronts, and I'll kind of address that as we go, but certainly welcome.
Yeah, we've been getting questions on graduations too, but I've been saying that's your problem, not mine.
I know. That's good. No, and one of the things I'll kind of reiterate for folks is, you know, the guidance that we put out and that I put out myself around graduation still stays. And a big part of this is the also always encouraging folks to work with their local public health on a lot of these questions. We've had other things like how students can close out their year and needing students to come in and maybe pick up things. And we've had thoughtful, good approaches to that. And I always just encourage school officials to work with their local public health officials just to make sure that their approach is solid. So Kim, I guess I'll use that as my introduction for you to join us. And Kim, for those who don't know, is in the Panhandle and serves that. I guess we got the map up, so serves the whole Panhandle. Plus, you get an extra. Is that Grant County? I'm losing.
Yeah, you'd think so.
Yeah. I could say that's more, you know. So the Panhandle and more is Kim's responsibility. So I'll turn it over to Kim. I think maybe I'll ask you a couple questions as we go, just to get some insights from you too.
Okay, that'd be great. Go ahead and ask me your questions.
Sure. I mean, I know, Kim, you've kind of dealt with the graduation stuff and school. What's kind of the mood of folks as you've chatted with them? What are the types of questions you're getting, and you know, what's our, you know, kind of, what can we learn from that, I guess, as far as other areas we might project to help?
Well, Tabby's kind of our point person on this, so, but I think what has been confusing is when the new DHM went into place with the new guidance on churches, then it, you know, I think people think, well, that looks a lot like a graduation, perhaps. And so just trying to use logic to make that work, to say, if we did something similar in a school gymnasium, would that be okay? And
Hey, Kim, this is the governor. Can I offer just one big difference between worship services and graduation?
I know there's a
Worship
lot
service-
of prayer to get there to graduation. Please offer anything you can.
Well, one of the things I would talk to people about is that, look, with a worship service, generally you have stable populations, right? The congregation doesn't change that much. So you've got the same people generally going to the same house of worship week after week. With a graduation, you're really mixing people. And that's one of the things that we took into consideration with regard to why we made the decision on houses of worship, is that with a stable population, you're better off. So with a graduation, you are mixing broadly the population of the community, and I think that's a significant difference.
So we've been trying just to stick with your guidance, Commissioner Blumstead, and the governor's DHM, and then we had put together that guidance. So we're trying to navigate all of that, and we know that we're a huge disappointment to some people, and some are like, that's okay, we weren't going to do anything till after May anyway. I've heard from county commissioners and parents and certainly superintendents, and you know, we're just trying to keep between that narrow line of guidance from you all and doing right by our communities. So yeah, I think a lot of schools have found some very creative solutions, and they're adding on some little extras to honor the graduates. I think I might have mentioned this before, but Alliance is putting banners out around town of every graduate. Others are doing special things on Facebook, and a photographer's taking free pictures. And so it's not your traditional graduation, but I think it's still going to be as special as it can be. I mean, who else is going to have a graduation like this, you know? So.
That's what I've told my daughter. I said, what could be more memorable than a pandemic that did everything? One thing, Kim, I'd say, and I think like the governor mentioned, one of the challenges I think with graduations is families then want to gather, they want to celebrate afterward. And I think among the concerns is that it seems easier to go through a process in which we can be clear that the safest way is virtual or waiting till after May 31st. And that continues to be my recommendation. And I've had quite a few schools reach out, and we've had, you know, different really creative ways that are probably safe, right? I mean, the cars driving, those types of things. I think what you've laid out within the Panhandle as some scenarios that are all right, but I have other areas of the state where that might still be a concern. And so I think the most important thing that I would want to highlight is if I don't reflect on the fact that the rest of the DHM has changed for other things. Maybe Governor, I've more jokingly said, you know, schools are really nothing like tattoo parlors. Maybe I hope that's true, you know. And so but the reality is there is a difference between the churches and what the expectation are, and this notion that we would have these large family gatherings or gatherings around. And so exercising caution right now seems to be the best thing, and I think that's what we do if we stay within that particular guidance from May 31st or through May 31st. So, well,
that's what we continue to try to do. So,
no, I appreciate that. What are there other things we should be thinking about, Kim, from a school perspective in intersecting with you? I know you can't speak for necessarily everyone, but you're highly regarded statewide, is what I'd say. So.
Well, that's interesting because Caroline might be on also, but there was a meeting this morning with our state college, and they're, you know, making plans for the fall and are asking us to be involved in those meetings, which I really appreciate. And it's just so hard to think much beyond a week from now or 2 weeks from now than to think several months. But I know Caroline also said what Shattern is kind of planning, and I thought, just thinking about what will the next school year look like. Again, I think we're kind of far out to make solid plans on that, but it's on everybody's mind because, I doubt we have a vaccine by then, and we still need to make accommodations. So.
No, and it's a great point and a great segue actually, because I think a bit of my next conversation anyway, or the next slide, will give us a chance to talk with a couple superintendents about those very things. So I'll go ahead and transition to the next slides, and I'm going to have Mark Shepard and Jim Sutphin join to talk. Mark from Fremont and Jim from Millard. But very much on my mind is thinking about how we get ready for summer and how we start a process to talk about the fall and protocols. And one thing I'll just highlight, and I think it's still on the agenda, that I'll try to join the governor on Thursday for your press conference. I think that's still the plan, Governor. But but one of the things I'd love people to take a look at is this notion of, in fact, you can look at this website, returntoschoolroadmap.org, which starts to do some planning. And in fact, I've had a conversation with our post-secondary or public post-secondary partners about their processes as well. And I just wanted to share a little bit and have Mark and Jim kind of share a little bit about where they're at and things that we might be able to help with. So Mark, I'll start with you as I see you're unmuted. So.
Okay. Well, first of all, Commissioner, thank you very much for allowing me to come on as a panelist. And I've appreciated your weekly discussions, listened to every one of them and participated in a couple of them already. But, obviously closing out the school year is on everybody's mind. Within the next month, that's going to occur across the state. And all of us are engaged in some form of online learning currently. So we have to figure out how to kind of close that out and finish. And so we're working with our teachers right now on that and our families. Graduation is a big point of discussion. And so what we've chosen to do in Fremont, and I know many other school districts have as well, is to honor our graduates with hopefully 2 graduations. The first one will be a virtual ceremony. We handed out caps and gowns this past week. We fashioned it right after our grab and go lunch program, where students pulled up and they were basically handed their caps and gowns and they went on their way. And part of the reason that we did that is number one, we wanted students to start thinking about that from the perspective of closing out their high school careers. Number 2, we wanted them to be able to take pictures if they wanted, to be able to submit those to us for the virtual graduation, which we're going to actually have take place on the date that our normal graduation would have been, which is May 16th. We've also planned an in-person graduation for July 26th. I got a little uneasy when the governor and Matt Hughes started talking about don't plan anything until August 1, when we had already kind of established that date, but it sounds like August 1 isn't the key. But we've put July 26th out there, allows our families and our students to plan. It also gives us another date, which we publicized, of July 1, so that if July 26th isn't going to work, that we can notify families by July 1 so they can plan accordingly. Like other communities, we've had businesses step up. One of our local banks, working with a sign company, put together some signs for all of our seniors, both our seniors and Archbishop Bergen seniors. And those are throughout the community right now, which is really cool. One of the things I keep telling our people is when we're done with all this COVID-19 stuff, and hopefully it's sooner than later, I would hope that we don't go back to doing things the way we always have done them. And that's a great example of an opportunity that a local bank saw and a local business saw. And hopefully that's a tradition that maybe we can start and build on in the future. Collection of materials and Chromebooks has been a big point of discussion. We've had weekly meetings with our ESU superintendents as well, and everybody's looking at it a little bit differently. Fremont being the largest district within our ESU district, we have to look at it differently than maybe, you know, a smaller school. But what we're really keying in on how we're going to deal with our seniors versus everybody else, because intentionally everybody else should be back this fall. And so if we don't collect their Chromebooks till this fall, that's okay, because they can really truly bring them back to school with them. But the seniors materials, we think it's important that when they're done with their online coursework, that we'll collect those Chromebooks. We'll probably do the reverse, so the grab and go, and we'll have them kind of drop, and we'll put them into some type of a container, disinfect, and let that set aside for a few days before we would begin to work with those materials. Obviously, school nutrition, both for the school year, the remainder of the school year, and then as we head into the summer, looks a lot different than it has in the past. We're serving about 3,700 meals a week right now. To put that in perspective, we've had a summer feeding program the past 10 years, and we've averaged about 1,600 meals. So serving many more kids, many more families. And then, you know, as we move into the summer feeding program, I talked to our nutrition services director today to find out what is it that he's really anticipating. And he thinks we'll probably continue to serve more meals this summer than we have in the past. Maybe not as many as we are today, but probably somewhere in between where we've been in the past and where we are currently. Other things that are on our mind, summer school, obviously, we're following. Andy Rickley had laid out a process last week. We're very similar, really following the Nebraska Reads Act. It'll be online. The students have already been previously identified. We were already preparing for that for this summer. And so we'll focus on reading. There'll be individualized learning plans with packets, and then weekly updates to the families and to the students. But I think we'd be kidding ourselves if we thought we can teach reading virtually and online only. So that's a challenge, and that's a challenge that we'll face for years to come, because we have several groups of students right now that are not getting that one-to-one attention that we've given them in the past. We are doing some things a little bit creative. We've used Camp Invention in the past for our high ability learner program in the summer. Camp Invention does have some online materials and online programming, so we're working with them right now. And then we're looking at the potential of a Jumpstart program, if it would be possible, right before school starts. So kind of a late summer school. We've done that off and on over the last several years, and with varied results, but we know that this year there's probably going to be more catch up needed than in years past. Last thing I'll mention is in the fall, we've already worked with 3 different calendars. So one would be the traditional calendar, which for us would have started August 11th, and we hope that we can still start August 11th. We've also produced a calendar that looks at after Labor Day till Memorial Day. So it kind of keeps those 2 as bookends, and then shortens all the breaks in the middle, which a lot of people probably won't like, but obviously we've been doing things much differently than we have in the past. And then we've also looked at a calendar where if we have to go into some type of a break situation, maybe 3 to 5 weeks in the middle, depending on when it happens, we can either shorten up some of those breaks and do that in combination with some online learning opportunities. But you know, we're looking at all 3 of those different options because we just don't know for sure what we'll be dealing with. We know we'll be doing a lot of early assessment. We know we'll be doing some teaching and reteaching, even more so than we ever have in the past. And like other school districts, we've also looked at pushing our one-to-one Chromebook implementation down to 2nd grade. And so we'll be bringing our board a recommendation to purchase some additional Chromebooks so that we can push that from 5th through 12th all the way down to 2nd through 12th grade. And I think that's going to be beneficial for our students, regardless of what happens with COVID-19.
Well, thanks, Mark, for that kind of rundown. I'll turn it over to Jim, and then I might have a couple of questions for both of you after Jim concludes. So thanks, Jim.
Yeah.
For joining. Yeah.
You bet. Matt, can you hear me okay?
Yep, sure can.
All right, thanks. Thanks for having me on today and having an opportunity to share and ask some questions as well. To all the people that are participating today, I just wanted to reach out and say thank you to you as well. had many conversations with people across the state, and you have been extremely helpful to us. I know as we work our way through this, and what you do and how you do it matters to the communities and our families. And I am really appreciative of the fact that we've been able to bond together as educators so that we can continue to work our way through this and provide the best possible situation for our families. So thank you to the health officials, the governor's office, you, Matt, and all of our school officials that are working. So as we talk about this, we came back and we tried to answer two really main questions the entire time we've been involved with COVID-19. The first one is, and it's written more of a statement, we're going to take care of our employees so they can take care of our kids. So that's really been objective number one. And the second part has been, we're going to do our best to help our students earn their credits and help mitigate holes in learning. And so everything we've done, we've tried to filter through, and that includes shutting down and opening up and all those good things. And that's kind of where we're finding ourselves today, right? We're in the middle of about 2 weeks left of school. And so we're in the process with our teachers and our parents on what does a closing down the school year look like. Certainly different because we are in a spot where where we have to collect thousands of textbooks and maybe more like hundreds of thousands of textbooks and lots of devices, computers, etc. So we've worked with the health department. The health department Audipor was extremely helpful in giving us some advice around that. So if you're working on that, I would say to you, your health department could be of great service to you. We will basically do a collection with maintaining of social distancing. In smaller schools, it'll be likely curbside, and those materials will be checked in, and then they will be left alone for 5 days before we will begin to interact with them. And there's a cleaning process that we will also follow and work with on that. When it comes down, while we're shutting down that though, we also have a lot of people that are working on gearing up. And as we gear up, it's gearing up for summer and it's gearing up for fall. So if we go back to our original statement, we'll do our best to help our students earn their credits and help mitigate holes in learning. We know that we have some students that are far exceeding what is happening in their life right now. They're highly motivated. They have found their groove and they have very robust 4-year learning plans. And so we're going to have a summer school option at the secondary level that's going to allow them to continue to do that. We do not want to take away those credit opportunities for those kids that want to advance themselves. And maybe some of you don't have this. We do in Millard. We have some reluctant learners. We have some students that maybe don't engage as much as we would like. And they may be in a spot where they are credit deficient. And so we want to also make sure that our summer school has a focus on credit deficiency at that secondary level, because we worry about the further they are away from graduation at the age of 16, the less likely it is that they're going to graduate. And so we want to make sure that we work on that credit recovery component this summer as well. So we will have a very robust secondary summer school program where students will be able to earn their credits. If anybody had any questions about it, about what we're offering stuff, we'd be more than willing to share the information we have. It's what you have done for us. So we want to make sure we're returning that favor as well. At the elementary level, we have already identified students that were reading below grade level. We want to continue on that path of working on the reading act, but we also want to work in the area of mathematics. And so we'll have a summer school program that will really focus on filling those holes that students have, and not only holes that they've developed during the time of COVID-19, but even students that have come to us not ready to learn at the level what we'd consider to be grade level. So that's kind of how we're handling the summer school and kind of we're handling the shutting down. I do want to talk just briefly about the food insecurity. We have served just right at 205,000 meals since COVID-19 has started. It's about 42 to 43,000 meals a week. We have seen what started off as a kind of about 3,000 meals. Now we're up to a lot more, 3,000 meals a day. Now we're up to about 6,000 meals a day. We anticipate that is going to continue to grow. unless we see things in the economy open up and some of the people are pulled back to work. And even then, I think that's going to be a long, slow process. So the MOAC superintendents, and that's MOAC is the area that we all serve in the city of Omaha, includes Elkhorn, OPS, Ralston, Gretna, Bellevue, Springfield, Platteview, DC West. We're going to meet on the 12th of May with the food bank. And Cheryl Logan has put together a really, really cool tool, which is a heat map, which is going to allow all of us districts to plug in where our food service programs are going to be. And then Brian Barks, who runs the food program for the state of Nebraska, you know, the food bank, is going to help us develop a plan where we can kind of fill some of these holes so we can look at more of a community-wide response to the food insecurity. And perhaps what can come out of this is almost a shopper's guide, that if you're under food insecurity, here can be a plan that you can access for the rest of the summer. And we appreciate those waivers that have been coming forward so that we can offer that to our families. The food insecurity is going to be a challenge, I think, for all of us as we look at supply chains. And so we're all really closely watching to make sure that we're getting the supplies we need. And there has been at times a few delays, and at times it's coming pretty well. But I think having a real global perspective will be advantageous to us. And I guess I would say to anybody on the line, I wouldn't be afraid to reach out to the food bank, right? I mean, that somehow we've got to have a tip of the spear response as communities. It isn't the sole responsibility of the school district to feed families and feed kids, but we play a major role in that. And the resources that we have available through the federal funding for the lunch program could really be advantageous for all our communities. The last thing I'm going to share, and then I'll be quiet because I know you got lots of stuff that you want to get done, is I really like what Corey Epler put out today, where he's called this unfinished learning versus holes. We know that during the time of COVID-19, kids have developed holes and the gaps in their learning. It's not every kid, some kids, right? And that's what's going to happen. Like Mark talked about in the fall, we're going to be doing some testing. But having a lens of unfinished learning really is a refreshing look, and I think positive language around that, you know what, we're going to do this. We have some things that are unfinished that we're going to catch you up on while we're looking at the standards for the next grade level that you're going to be achieving at. And I think that's going to be really helpful to us. We know that recovery is where we're headed, recovery from COVID-19, but I hope we don't stop there. I think there's another step beyond recovery, and that is back to thriving. Just like a business owner will want to get moved beyond recovery for his business and move it back into that thriving status, I think we as educators have to have a focus and an eye on what is it going to look like when we're going to thrive. And with this, we did do one thing that I don't know if this will be helpful to anybody else, but we had some issues with failure to engage, really in jeopardy of not graduating because they needed to complete their credits. We have a number of substitute teachers in our district that are really high quality people. So we reached out to them and asked them if they would serve as a mentor for a senior. And so a substitute teacher could take on a caseload of 4 students. They meet with them 5 times a week, Monday through Friday, somewhere between an hour and a half a day. They're their organizer, they're their cheerleader, they're their surrogate. And we have seen some really positive response in doing that. And there are some seniors that were in jeopardy of graduating that are now on target and are going to be able to finish this race in front of them. For whatever reason, they've struggled with that engagement in that virtual world that we've been offering. And we've been able to help move that obstacle out of their way so that they can achieve. So with that, I'll conclude. And again, thank you to everybody that's helped Millard and helped us navigate through this.
Yeah, thanks, Jim. And I'm having a little bandwidth problem, so I'll shut my video off and see if that'll help me. So, but thanks for both Mark and Jim for your kind of efforts and a perspective from what you're dealing with. I think I'm actually going to go ahead and just kind of move forward, and I want to get the issues in there, but I want Mark and Jim to stay on if you can, because I think there's a couple key points that I want to be able to raise with my next two panelists. So we've got John Scretta and Larry Ann Polk. And I just wanted to point out that, again, how much I appreciate the ESU's willingness to kind of manage some regional conversations and help kind of filter and prioritize some of our responses from the agency standpoint. Today, we did release some additional information on Rule 10, kind of the next steps and ending the year and how we do that in an organized fashion from a rule and reg perspective. We'll have more of that forthcoming. I think I saw something around Rule 14. So our non-publics that are approved schools have similar types of issues as well. But I welcome John and Larry Ann, and I think Larry Ann's president of ESUCC, so I'll defer to her first. So.
Okay, well, thank you. I have some internet problems too, so I'm going to keep my video muted as well. Thank you so much for allowing us and the ESU Coordinating Council to have a voice in these meetings. We do appreciate it. I wanted to speak to the petition, the Rule 62 petition first, and then I would like to talk a little bit about communication. So first of all, to give you a bit of context, as many of you know, that in the week of April 20th, there was a petition that was circulating, and this is not a petition that requires signatures, right? This is a petition that is simply requesting the state board to make some action. And this petition was circulating through some of the school districts and asking the school districts to contribute to a list of rules that they wanted the state board to address in some fashion. After the April 23rd communication from the commissioner regarding some of the Rule 10 aspects, that petition did not get submitted. Then last week, Commissioner, you requested that the coordinating council move forward with the petition. And the reason you asked the coordinating council was due to two reasons. Our regional statewide reach that we have as a coordinating council. You know, we all 17 of the ESUs have every public and every private school part of at least one ESU. So because we have such a broad reach, our list of rules and regulations that we could help contribute to was very comprehensive. So that was one reason. The other reason as to why we were asked is that, you know, our fundamental purpose as a service unit is to work with our schools on behalf of our schools and in partnership with a department. So because of the structure and how we are statutorily created, it puts us in a position to really be a liaison between the schools and the state board. So on Friday last week, on May 1st, our board approved the process that we would go ahead and help support our school districts in getting the petition to the state board. So we took that original petition that was developed in partnership with Justin Knight and the Perry Law Firm, and we added the KSB firm and many additional items, rules, regulations, statutes, and we developed a 10-page petition that has been notarized and submitted and received by the commissioner today. So many of you, if you haven't received a copy of this petition yet, you will have it before the end of tomorrow. Our ESUs must, in part of Rule 62, we must, as a petitioner, make sure that all the stakeholders that are a part of the petition receive a copy. So we've been instructed to make sure that we're communicating that to all of our school districts. So that is where we are with the petition. Now, naturally, the petition strongly focuses on the decisions that have not yet been made in rules and regulations. So things that would be happening after this point in time and moving forward. The commissioner and his team will continue to work on the rules and regulations that have needing to be addressed from, you know, March 7th or whatever that first date is up until this point. Which leads me to the communication part of what I wanted to mention. The coordinating council has also been working with the NDE to streamline communication. NDE and all of their efforts have had really critical communications submitted to all of us from a variety of people. and in a variety of platforms. So we might have, 3 or 4 emails that are really very critical to our decision making come from 3 or 4 different people during the day, or come on Twitter or not Facebook, our email, or onto the website for NDE. So we've been working with NDE to try to help streamline that process to a degree where the schools are getting their critical information from one email address, and we are working closely with getting one document that will provide timely updates and necessary briefs as to what the school districts need to be doing. So we've started that work with the communication department at NDE. So I guess I'll stop there. I'll ask Commissioner if you have anything more you wanted me to share about those things, but I know Dr. Scretta has some things to share as well.
No, I'll just reiterate, and I appreciate obviously in these unique moments of time, probably almost no one had ever read Rule 62 that's on this phone, right? I think it started from a law in 1994. It actually gives, not just underneath that rule, but underneath the law, the ability of an agency like the Department of Education to project the things that might yet happen in the future and how we can respond to that. And so it's been interesting to kind of look at that. I appreciate, number one, ESUCC going ahead and submitting that petition and working with us and trying to find some orderly ways in which we can project into the future about how to make decisions, because I am concerned not just for the immediate year, but obviously going into the fall, and we're going to use that as an opportunity to kind of explore those things. John, I'll turn it over to you for your comments.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner, and appreciate the opportunity to be on the call today, and just really want to express our gratitude for the opportunity to have these weekly convenings and just work consistently and diligently to get clarification and information out to all of our stakeholders. One of the things that I think is really important in what Dr. Polk said, and she made a number of really salient points, is that ESUs structurally are in a really good place to be a vital spoke in the wheel and a member of a feedback loop, basically, that helps to be a good liaison with communication to and from NDE, and also serving as advocates for our school districts to get clarification. I think it's helpful to review really quickly the timeline here. On April 21st, Data Research and Evaluation released an FAQ that's about 9 pages that's got some really important information from the department related to a number of topics that impact end-of-year reporting, as well as some other facets of accreditation. On April 23rd, the Commissioner released the message on Rule 10 accreditation, which promised at that point that on May 4th, and as promised, that's been released now, that there would be an end-of-year report and affidavit process for Rule 10. All of that has occurred not by happenstance and not by coincidence, but based upon continuing conversations from school districts sharing information, our school district superintendents sharing vital information to ESU administrators who have had the opportunity to connect with NDE officials on a regular and ongoing basis. There are still myriad questions out there, obviously, but we trust, and I know our schools are going to continue to persist in seeking proceeding with other guidance that is in the works that may impact both this year and next. The Rule 62 formal filing is a great reflection of the cooperative and supportive relationship that ESUs have with NDE, and also will get very much needed clarification to school districts on a variety of things as they may impact next year. So I just want to again reiterate my gratitude for having the opportunity to be on the call. And the school districts in ESU 6 have been doing tremendous work. And I think it really echoes the sentiment expressed by Jim Sutphin and Mark Shepard ahead of us, which is that, you know, in times of difficulty, leaders step up and embrace it as an opportunity. And you guys are doing that. And it's just been amazing and inspiring to be a part of the effort. So thank you.
Well, and just thanks to everyone that's been doing that, and everybody's having to do that all across the state in a lot of different ways. And I'm gonna just say, again, thanks to ESUs. Thanks for having the regional conversations. Keep those going. I think even as Mark mentioned, I think prior that those conversations have been really helpful. I have said, I think as recently as maybe late last week, if you thought closing our schools was difficult, wait till we try to open them. And I think we're going to need a lot more conversations yet and a lot more strategies to help us do that work. So Mark, did you have something you wanted to add?
Just a couple of real quick things. We were obviously the first school district to close, and it happened on a Saturday morning, really in response to what had happened in our YMCA the previous week with the Special Olympics activities. And I just wanted to express my gratitude to Governor Ricketts and Dr. Gary Antone. From the very beginning, they have been 100% supportive of, number one, that decision, but also moving forward with the way they have communicated to our state. It's amazing. You can pick up and look at CNN or Fox News or MSNBC, and you see other states that are in pretty much disarray. And a lot of that has to do with, in my opinion, the lack of communication coming from their leaders. And our leadership has been awesome. The daily briefings, I think people tune into those. They want to know what's going on. They want to know what the latest is. And just the way we've gone about it. Nebraska always tries to do it our own way, and this is not an exception. And we haven't had wholesale shutdowns. We don't have wholesale reopenings, but we're going about it in a way that's very calculated and very scientific. And I just, for one, appreciate Governor Ricketts' leadership in all of this.
Well, hey, thanks very much, Mark. I appreciate the compliment. And again, I appreciate your leadership and taking action when you did. That was a gutsy call to make at the time, and going first, and certainly led the way for everybody else. So kudos to you.
And just, I'm going to go ahead and move to our next set of slides, but thanks again. I mean, for everyone, one of the, I see a couple questions that popped up around graduation yet. Key part around graduations or any type of structured events. We're hopeful that we can find safe ways to do that, kind of in person in the summer. I think we're learning as we go. And just, again, working with local health officials is part of that big key. So, hey, I'm going to go to Corey Epler. He's already got one compliment today, so I don't want to add to that. So, Dr. Epler, do you want to run through this? And by the way, to my staff, we have about 9 minutes left, so that gives you a rundown.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Commissioner Bloomstead. Wanted to talk just real briefly around the efforts that we're calling Launch Nebraska, which is ultimately around thinking from summer into the fall. And what you see on the slide represents 4 what I might call larger categories of topics that we hope to have folks consider as they're making plans for what fall might look like. And our hope and what we're working on at the department is to build tools and resources that actually districts and schools can utilize, so they're not having to figure all of this out on their own. And there's a million things that we should and need right now, but it does take some time to build some of those pieces. So I would say just stay tuned to the efforts around Launch Nebraska. And really one thing that I want to highlight right now is this idea of how summer can be used. And I appreciate Dr. Sutphin, the comment around unfinished learning, because I do think that that is really what we hope to communicate as we're thinking about what summer might look like. I sent out an email on Friday around a 10-part professional learning series, specifically around instructional equity, unfinished learning, and remote learning. We're also going to highlight some tools and resources that districts can utilize. I understand many folks are focusing on literacy. I also think there's really space too, hopefully, for mathematics and even what science might look like in this space. So we're going to highlight Zern Math as a possible resource for districts to utilize. in a digital environment over the summer, and then also highlight additional literacy supports that ultimately align with our efforts around the Nebraska Reading Improvement Act and Nebraska Reads. So if you have questions, feel free to send me an email, but again, just really thinking about what we can do to provide support through the summer, and then also looking towards the fall as well. I'll stop there, Commissioner, since we're short of time. So happy to answer any questions via email or a call.
Yeah, thanks, Corey. And just to let folks know, we'll be putting out more information on this as we go, and probably soon to have a dedicated website for some of this work, or a dedicated site for this. Our team's working very hard on these areas. And so I think Dean Folkers is up next to talk just a little bit about the digital learning, and probably connections to Corey's work in that sense. So.
Yes, absolutely. Thanks, Commissioner. So the aspects of Launch Nebraska and the work that you just heard from Corey, trying to pull a lot of the resources and tools together, really are a compilation of delivering resources to educators within Nebraska. But we also know that underneath all of that, there's a number of disparate challenges and opportunities with regard to the infrastructure or the access to broadband that exists in some communities, the access to devices. We heard a couple of examples of expansion to lower grades. There are some districts that don't have a one-to-one opportunity set up as a part of this work, as well as there's a significant plethora of different approaches from a software perspective, including disparate versions or approaches or lack of approaches around learning management systems, digital object repositories, and a variety of other kind of tools. And so what we have been doing, a number of people within the state, from Network Nebraska to the Educational Service Unit Coordinating Council, ESUs, others, the Nebraska Children and Families Foundation, and others that have been all sort of working on different bits and pieces of this approach. We've been working to connect this to be a part of Launch Nebraska, and so that there's a coordinated connection and understanding of ways that we can leverage at scale some of the activities and resources that are occurring. And so we've partnered with companies like Microsoft and others to kind of help pull some of these different pieces together and think through what are the opportunities that we have moving forward that we can do at scale that benefits all Nebraskans as we move through the summer and into the fall. And then wrapping all around that, sort of a focus and a reminder of security and privacy concerns as it's related to the use of those particular devices. And so I'll stop there. And of course, if there are questions or interest, but stay tuned as we continue our work in Launch Nebraska.
Yeah, and thanks, Dean, for that. And I just saw one question and one thing, and maybe a point for Corey and Dean both. So we still are going to have areas without internet connectivity, and no matter what we do, are these, we can, well, I won't ask the question, I'll just state it this way. I believe we can start trying to make some of these resources available to schools to be able to use in other forms. I think I saw some question earlier today about what is remote learning only by technology and not necessarily. Remote learning, I think, is broader than that. We certainly know of folks that are using other approaches, including printed materials and whatnot. So again, I appreciate that ongoing concern. So Melody, you want to talk a little bit about early childhood, and
Sure. Yeah.
Karen, I don't know if we'll make it to you or not, so we'll see.
Well, two very quick things. Many of you out there have been contacted by your local Head Start grantee, because there is a significant amount of money for some summer Head Start programs that are targeted for children who are transitioning into kindergarten and for children who have IEPs. And this is something that may look a little bit like what was referred to as a Jump Start program. I know there's been lots of concern about, can we have those kids in the building? And again, we're talking about nothing before the end of May. We're talking about programs that could operate between 4 and 8 weeks. But somewhere in there, the funding is non-competitive, so talk to your local Head Start grantee. And a lot of them use school district classrooms. We're probably talking about small groups of children. We're not talking about 100 kids in, in a couple of rooms. We're talking about very small groups of children. And this is something that could very significantly help with some of the kids who come to school with the most significant risk factors. And then very quickly, other than that, at the governor's press conference this afternoon, the NebraskaChildCareReferral.org was unveiled, and it's something that even will help, we think, help match families with childcare providers. There has been a lot of differences in the space in the last 2 months with childcare providers either being closing or being open for fewer kids. But this may help, especially as people transition back to work, and that may include school district employees who may not be expecting to spend some time this summer at school, but may need to. It's NEChildcareReferral.org. So check that out.
Thanks, Melody. And I think we're at time. And actually, there's a lot happening on nutrition services, and we'll continue to provide updates as we can through the website and otherwise. I just want to see if the governor had any closing remarks, and then we'll wrap up. So, and I might have lost the governor. Maybe
No, we're here. I'm here. Just had to unmute there. Just want to say thanks to everybody for all your hard work on this. Appreciate everything you're doing to make sure that kids are getting fed, they're continuing to get educated. I know it's a lot of work on everybody's part here. I just appreciate everything that you're doing to make sure we keep the state moving forward. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Governor. And just thanks to everyone. And again, we'll continue to press forward on that. Thanks to all the panelists today. Really appreciate this. I feel like it's a weekly production effort, and there's a reason I probably did not go into TV or radio. So appreciate everybody's commitments to our students around the state. Thanks, and we'll see you again next week. Take care, everyone.